Authorities in eastern Libya say thousands of people are dead after a massive flood tore through the city of Derna. Thousands more feared missing. Storm Daniel swept in over the Mediterranean on Sunday after pummeling Greece last week. One official said dams above Derna collapsed, sweeping away whole neighborhoods. The disaster took place in a part of the country that the internationally recognized government in Tripoli does not control. Still, the council in Tripoli, which serves as head of state in the divided country, has called for international help.
We always say at the Black Panther Party that they can do anything they want to us. We might not be back. I might be in jail. I might be anywhere. But when I leave, you can remember I said with the last words on my lips, that I am a revolutionary.
These are the voices of New Africa. These are the voices of New Africa. These are the voices of New Africa. Free in the land, and we ain't asking y'all. And welcome to another episode of the Voices of New Africa, the show where we educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. I'm your host, your brother, Prophecy, and I got my comrades with me. I got Kayi and our Grandmaster Teacher for Dolly. How y'all doing, man? How you doing?
I'm trying to talk in the mic because we just got off the air, but I'm high in spirits and full of pep, like the old general used to say, General Hamisha, high in spirits and full of pep. Glad to be here.
How you doing, Grandmaster?
I'm doing great as I can under these evil systems of imperialism, colonialism, and neo-colonialism that are dominating our existence at this time.
No doubt. So earlier on in our radio broadcast, we talked about a lot of different things. We talked about a lot of the disasters that's been going on. One in Libya, you have over 11,000 people who have died because of this flood, the result of this hurricane, right? And it's suspected, it's feared that over 20,000 people are dead. And also in Morocco, we talked about the earthquake that killed up to 3,000 people. And you kind of gave us some interesting insights, things about, what makes these disasters, not only just naturally it's a terrible thing that happened in these countries, but because of European Western forces, which have devastated these countries, they have made this problem even, more difficult to handle. Kind of give us some insights on that, if you can.
Okay, so if we want to talk about, disaster in Libya, for example, and recall that Obama overthrew the government of Gaddafi and assassinated Gaddafi, and then so since that time Libya has been in chaos, and the Libyan government is split into two parts. One part is supposed to be the western part of Tripoli, where the UN is supporting the government, and then you have another part of where you have militia, that was created, by the United States and NATO forces that allowed them to overthrow the government. When Libya is a rich country of oil and other, resources, and they would have been in a position to handle that disaster, which 11,000 people. If the government had not been overthrown, and they had some a couple of dams in eastern part on the shore of Libya that basically had been taken care of since you had an outbreak of differences among the Libyans. Libya was a consolidated African state that was not only helping its own people through the oil, but also was helping other Africans throughout the world. And so when we look at what happened, and they're talking, and then you look at the media, and the media is talking about how bad, how the local forces are not able to come together to do, to allow the people to come in from the outside to help the people and all that. But in the African governments that have been carved up into these small states, such as Morocco, where you had the earthquake, do not have the capacity because when colonialism divided up, Africa into all of these small little states, they did not allow Africa to unite as a whole. So that because Africa is the richest continent on the face of the earth, but it has the poorest people on the face of the earth as a result of a neo-colonial arrangement. That is where when black faces, but white power still resides in those black faces. People who are in control of the government, who have no understanding of what true independence is, and then we talk about how in Nkrumah, when in 1957 attained the independence of Ghana, told all the other African people that the independence of Ghana is meaningless unless Africa is, under control of African people. And so therefore now we have all of these disasters that are taking place. Even when you talk about Hawaii, the little place as far as, as the native people of Hawaii, and they had a kingdom, and they had that fire, that destroyed that, and then they come back to talk about the local, people, and they respond because there's no, and the United States is in control of Hawaii. Pulled Hawaii into the United States in the 1950s. And so when we look at these situations, we'll see how they have created a havoc among the people, and have the people virtually arguing about what the people didn't do, what the government official, local government official were not able to do or did not do, and all that. When we understand our educational process, that we are African people, and throughout the world we are suffering from European intrusion and European control and United States control about the areas in which we live, and are creating wars and things, and dividing up, even the small states that had gained their so-called independence, or their state independence, or flag independence, but not real independence. So we got to begin to look at that. And so when we talk about what's happening in Libya, we got to understand it started right there under the so-called Obama administration, when Hillary Clinton and Obama decided they were going to overthrow Muammar Gaddafi and the Libyan state.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically, we've heard the propaganda, and a lot of so-called, a lot of African people who align themselves with the Liberal Party will even celebrate the murder of Gaddafi. I hear D.L. Hughley always talk about, yeah, man, Obama was on it. He got what's his name, Bin Laden and Gaddafi, and in celebration like this is a positive thing. What's his name? Yeah, like this is a positive thing. But not understanding that, Gaddafi was an individual who was actually fighting for something that is really in our best interest, not only our best interest, but the best interest of our brothers and sisters on the continent and globally. Right. And one thing we got to understand is everybody, the propaganda of America teaches us to look down upon and hate individuals who actually have our best interests in mind, because it is the interest of the United States to exploit our people, not only right here, but all over the world. So as you was talking about all of these countries who have the flag independence, what do you mean by flag independence? What is that?
Flag independence, but you have a flag that just like the red, black, and green. I mean, not red, black, and green. You have a red, but the red, white, and blue, like the United States. But we got the United States. The white people have real power in their, in this country. But in Africa and other places, you have only flag, what we call flag independence, which means that the country is still being ruled by forces outside of itself, that the people are really not in charge, are not in control. And so therefore they have a flag. So therefore they say they're independent. So you got 54 flags in Africa, and none of them have true, real independence because they're so small and then, you know, in the world where the capitalist system is ruling, they have the big nations like China and India and the United States, where people power is going to come into play. Whereas in Africa and other places, the people have no power; they have poverty, and the people who are ruling them are on the behest of former colonial power, the former mother country, you know, which is like England and France and Spain and Portugal and Holland and the United States, you know. So Liberia, you know, which was created by has flag independence, does not have real independence because Firestone and other U.S. forces, capital forces, are in control of Liberia, for example.
Hey, want to welcome everybody to the show who's checking in. Big shouts out to Susan Rogers. He said, "Good afternoon, y'all. Free to land to you, Queen Susan Rogers, business owner, longtime supporter." And she actually made this shirt for me right here, this Nava shirt. You know, she was like, I'm gonna test something out," and she hooked this up for me. So yeah, big ups to Susan Rogers. Make sure y'all support that queen. She's doing big things. She's actually quilter, what's African quilter handle. Susan Rogers, Quilts and Accessory. I think that's the name of her business. But yeah. So big ups to you. And I see you gave a shout out to everybody, comrade. So yeah, if you land to you too. So we've been talking about some of these disasters that have happened on the continent. You mentioned Morocco, which had an earthquake. Around 3,000 people, estimated 3,000 people have died. And you was telling us about the history of Morocco, how, you know, these individuals, about who they call the Berbers. Yeah. So yeah, if you could, you know, kind of tell us about those particular dynamics of these individuals. Educate us on that.
So we go back and look at Morocco, you know, way back in the past. You know, the Africans were the first ones to go over and conquer Spain and Portugal and created civilization in those places. In other words, created Turtle Island. And we go back and look what happened, and when Ferdinand and Isabella came into power, they kicked out. The Africans had already basically left, you know, went back to Morocco, you know, but ultimately they came back and they overthrew Morocco and they became a Spanish, you know, colony. All these colonies, you know, these areas in North Africa, either the French or the Spanish or the English, you know, came into power and took over those countries. But the people who were still left when the Arabs did their sweep in population in 700, you know, AD, when the Arabs went across the North African continent, you had people who were still left that were native to the country. Then the Berbers are the ones in the Atlas Mountains, which is a mountain high, you know, in North Africa. And these people stay in the Atlas Mountains. This is where the earthquake basically, you know, took place. 6.1, I think, earthquake took place, and thousands of people, 3,000 they've counted so far, but they said it could go up to about 10,000 or more, because the area doesn't have roads, and you know you can't go. And so the structure of these small countries, you know, like Morocco, once they got its so-called independence from Spain or France or which one of one of those European countries that ruled them, then it left these governments, and the kingdom of Morocco still had its king, you know, and the king Mohammed VI is there now, and they don't have the ability, even though the Europeans are still enriching themselves off of whatever riches are in those countries like Algeria and Morocco and Chad, name those countries in North Africa. But the Europeans are still basically taking control of these resources, and so the local people, the local government, are not able, don't even have the ability to handle these kinds of so-called disasters, and they have been criticized, because they're not bringing in all these foreign forces to come in, because these people in Morocco know what the foreign forces would do to come in to take over and overrun their country, and so these are the kind of things we have to understand in terms of what's happening in terms of that. But it goes back to when we talked about Libya. These forces are not. They have been divided up by the former European power to the point of that they're not able to come together in unity. And Africa itself, if the richest continent on the face of the earth, would have been able to handle any disasters or whatever, would even be able to carry forth in other areas of the world, with the resource. But we do not have control over any. There's no African country that has, where Africans have control of the vast resources that we even still have today.
You got anything you want to add, comrade?
Actually, I don't. When we go over the history of Morocco, we'll see that there's a lot of things that's happening today that's the end result of colonialism. But and the same goes with Libya. I was just looking at Morocco history of earthquakes, and I remember a few years ago we was talking about HARP and the things that they were producing in HARP. I wouldn't put it past these psychopaths that they're doing something underhandedly to create conditions in the environment that produce earthquakes, hurricanes, and so forth and so on. I don't have any proof of that, but what I do know is that based on our history, we can't put nothing past white folks. And for them to have there was just one, I believe, earthquake that they had in 2019. Now they have an extreme one now. Then they had one in 2017, and before then 2004. That's like 13 years. And then they had a series 2006. I'm sorry. And it looks like when the HARP information came about, the technology developed, and it seems like around the world, strategically, enemies of these folks are having these major disasters. I'm gonna look further into that because personally, from a people who don't have their independence here in the United States of America, I'm not gonna put anything past them. I'm gonna do my research on that and find out what's going on when we're having these catastrophes at a time when black countries are in turmoil, and that creates an opportunity to allow foreign companies, foreign nations to get involved in this so-called assistance where they take over the country and become wealthy off of the resources that they obtain through the idea that they're helping our people out. They've done that time and time again in Haiti. They are doing that now in Morocco. And God forbid what they're going to be able to do in Libya when they have total control of that situation.
I was going to say, Grandmaster Steve, did you want to?
Yeah, I want to say this. See, scientific, what we do with scientists, and faults, earthquake faults, but the climate change, all those things. There's no conspiracy other than the original conspiracy. The original conspiracy is when the Europeans came and took over the world, period. and they did not lead the world in any kind of good shape, even when they had when the world came to do independence and have revolutions and all those kind of things. The capitalist system still exists, and the capitalist system is not going to facilitate, the power empowerment of any people, no matter where they are in the world, because these rich folk, these rich what they call that European are going to be still, dealing with their own interests and everything. So when we talk about what's happening there, I'm recognized that Morocco, 50 years ago, 60 years ago, those African countries, those 54 African countries, are still, it did not get real independence. So consequently, whatever that happens in terms of earthquakes, the earthquakes are due to the nature and all the other things that go, but the climate change that of the European trying to go to Mars and going to, all the other things that they're doing and utilizing the fuels and things, that are creating climate, bad climates throughout the world. You know what I'm saying? And so even the Europeans themselves are suffering from this control that they have in terms of get the profit out of the earth. You know what I'm saying? And so when we look at all the disasters that are taking place, even in the United States, even in other places, as a result of that original conspiracy to take over the world and to take the wealth of the world, to enrich themselves, So we don't have to go there to have no investigation or anything in terms of that. That's all. That in other words, and that's why they're steadily standing up against China, trying to do everything they can to undermine China and other places. To keep their power, to keep their power over the world, and and the superpower, mentality. That is, that you're gonna go in, you're gonna interfere with anything that's gonna go. Because anytime the people try to come together to try to pull themselves together, that's the lesson of Libya. You hear what I'm saying? Because Gaddafi was on the right track in terms of building up his country and building up the African continent and the infrastructure and all that, and they did everything they could. And we heard an excerpt about the Sudan and Darfur and all that. The Europeans are behind all, because we go back and look at the history of all these countries, we see the hand that the European has played and continue to play. And these are the kind of things that we have to do. So we don't have to go do no investigations and stuff in terms of that. We know that the only thing it has to be the unity and the development of socialism as an ideology and a system that has to be created to take place to overtake the capitalist system.
So you said a lot interesting things, and I think it's kind of I think it's important to kind of since we kind of got into this subject of conspiracy theories, and I think it's kind of good to just talk about conspiracy theory thinking in general, because I think a lot of times our people will think we get knowledge and we're like, oh man, I'm getting some deep knowledge, when we're really just regurgitating conspiracy theory, and we're not actually doing a concrete analysis of objective reality. And that makes us kind of lazy thinking, because it's real, it's real easy to hear something and just jump on that and say, okay, yeah. But when you do a concrete analysis, you don't necessarily have to follow any kind of conspiracy theory, because it's kind of laid out right in front of your face about what's actually going on. You have a group of people who has gained power, wealth, resources, land, influence, all of these type of riches at the exploitation and detriment of people of the planet, all over the planet. So when you analyze that, when you see for example, what happened with the war in Iraq, with the war in Afghanistan, with all of these things. I mean, it ain't really a conspiracy because they ain't lying about it. It's right out there for you to know. It ain't a big secret what they're doing. It is right there, and I it concerns me when a lot of us just tend, and I'm not talking about you, brother. When a lot of people just tend to jump on conspiracies, we tend to overlook what's right in front of your face. And when you look at the big boogeyman, the Illuminati, the reptilian races, and the people from outer space that come down and whatever you might believe in, we overlook the concrete things that we can be doing to remedy our own problems. We overlook the solutions that are right in front of our face. And I've had this conversation with a lot of people because they were talking about some beings from outer space and waiting on them to come down with this advanced technology. And I was just basically telling them, I was like, okay, when they come down from outer space, you bring that technology to our community. Let's utilize it to build up our nation. You know what I'm saying? But until then, let's work collectively together to bring about something concrete that can actually benefit us. And people was just talking about, well, no, I ain't got time to be worried about that. I'm trying to get on this spiritual plane. And I'm like, well, basically you're saying that while these people are exploiting the entire world, while they are giving us our hell right here on earth, they ain't gonna do nothing. That's basically what I'm hearing. You're not going to do anything. You're just going to allow them to continue to do, the exact same thing that they've always been doing. And that's the reason why they told us that, on the plantation, you have to adopt this religion that will tell you that after you die, you're going to get your reward. Don't worry about how much you struggle right here on earth. When you die, you're going to get, your blessings or whatever. Meanwhile, they're living their heaven right here on earth off of the backs and the exploitation of the people. So, I think it's important that that we learn critical thinking skills. That we actually learn critical thinking skills, so we won't just get wrapped up with whatever sounds good, because we can be in fairy tale land and totally miss all of the opportunities, all of the things that we can physically be doing right now to better our condition. And I know that ain't originally where you was coming from with the Heart Project. I've heard of that. I can't really speak on it because it's like it's three words that a lot of people are afraid of. This detrimental because they don't use it. It's called I don't know. I ain't just looked at that, so I don't know. So I ain't even finna try to even speculate on it. But I understand the concrete material conditions that's going on globally that's causing really disasters all over the world. It's causing, poverty, it's causing disease, it's causing violence, it's causing war, it's causing crime. I understand these conditions clearly. We understand these causes clearly. And it ain't even, like I said, it ain't got to be a conspiracy. It's right there. They doing it in the open. They ain't even hiding what they're doing. You can see it. And I'm going to yield with that.
Yeah. I understand that the term conspiracy has gained a negative connotation. I'm not wasting energy on conspiracy. What I try to do is when I communicate with people, be able to share with them real life situations that have occurred and allow them to stop giving the benefit of the doubt to these white folks who have constantly proven time and time again that they're not on our side. We have too many of our people who really don't understand that. And a lot of times when you try to organize and build an organization, there's certain instances that will be the catalyst, the turning point of some people believing in the ideology and philosophy of us, or not being involved in the plight of liberation, freedom. And so we have to be prepared as leaders to be able to tackle any issue or concern that might be available to us to allow us to not to say convince, but help our people see the truth by telling the truth. And sometimes just examples of what they're doing around the world, knowing the facts and being able to share those facts concretely with our people helps us create an environment where we're building the organization, the movement, the new African independence movement, the Pan African movement. Um, but in any event, I don't put anything past white folks. So that's why I want to make sure that when I talk to my people and they're confused about any aspect of social activity, that I'm well versed in it and able to share with them the facts, the truth, and be honest with them about who we dealing with.
Okay. So in conspiracy connotes planning. Okay. So our counter conspiracy has to be our planning. Okay. So once we understand conspiracy in terms of being planning, that they're always planning to take advantage. They're always planning to do that. So we have to always be planning to overthrow whatever the existing system that exists that is taking advantage of us as a people and making us divided and all those kind of things in terms of doing that. So when the oppressor has the right to have his to conspire. You hear what I'm saying? It has its own, and the people who are being oppressed have their right to deal with conspire. Hear what I'm saying? To overthrow that system. So this is where we have to begin to understand because when we get to paranoia, that is that we don't really understand conspiracy. We don't understand the planning that's behind the things that are doing, and then we become paralyzed. Because we are looking, saying what the enemy, what is the enemy, what is it doing to, and that's why, like, when they start talking about racism, on these programs and all that, and they have all these countless pictures on the media showing race, how racism overrides, hear what I'm saying? And they got, we these white folks, these terrible white folks, they're racist. No, we got to get to our point of where we understand that's inside of them. We cannot change what's inside of them. They have to change what's inside of them. So we have to change the condition that are allowing them to do those things. That's why we're using these critical terms like colonialism and so our people can understand that we can move against these systems that have been set up by them, and we can overthrow and create our own new system where we come back to power. But we have lost power. We're coming back to power because we understand that within this system that is set up, that we are always going to be continually powerless, and we're always going to be continually begging these people to change their laws and begging these people to be like to like us, and we want to really like them, and we don't, and we want to be nonviolent and become cowards, when it comes down to doing the things that would be necessary for us as a people to do those things that's going to bring us to our own power over our own lives, over our own systems and all that. And we are not alone. So therefore we have allies in the whole world that we've been helping, and they're gonna help us if we only ourselves come to the point of organizing ourselves. And so we don't have to talk negative about these people, these Europeans. The European, the deed is already negative. You see what I'm saying? And so therefore, when we get people to see that negative, we don't have to talk about them and continually talk about them, because we got all these people talking that, oh yeah, I hate that white man, I hate this and that, and they're not making a move to organize nobody and do things that we're doing. So we don't have to get caught up in that. What we do is got to have the confidence in our people, and stop thinking that we're so ignorant that we can't come to the right conclusion that some of us will become conscious. You know what I'm saying? That just like we became conscious, the people themselves also can become conscious if we're able to organize ourselves to get that information out to them, to do those things that would be necessary to not only challenge power but to take over power.
Definitely. So, you know, so we were talking about these things. We're talking about um, all of these issues, the power forces, and whatnot. What do we actually need to be doing? That's the real question. What do we actually need to be doing to actually progress our movement and to put ourselves in a better situation? You know, as far as what we're trying to do. If we, we're not focusing on the conspiracy theories and all of, all of these things that these European people are doing. You said that we have to put ourselves in a position where they can't affect us. But anyway, I'll let you answer the question.
Yeah, through organization. Okay, so that's why continually I say I'm going on what all my ancestors have told us. We have to organize ourselves. We have to have our own united front. Our own, and we have to know that we have allies. Our allies are, and that's what our foreign policy will be about in terms of saying we're a nation, and we have to get the support of other, pressed nations to the point of understanding that we're going to join them in the freedom struggle worldwide, not just locally where we are, but locally. Locally, we just have to create our own institutions and our own organization and control the turf on which we live, control and move to the point of where we're in position to get the 5 states. That's what we want, the 5 states, or in most states that we want, or whatever. But we have to get ourselves in position. That is, we got to get our people to understand that we can move and get to. Because look here, Texas has the largest number of African people in the United States. It has 3.4 million Africans, in Texas, and then you got Georgia next to Texas, then you got Mississippi. Okay, so what I'm saying, we're scattered. You know what I'm saying? But majority of us are still in the so-called southern United States and all that. But we have to begin to get people to pull together in these areas and share these resources that we do have to come together. But we got to make a move, so Republic of New Africa has to make a move to make sure that our people understand that we have a government, that represents them, and to the point of where we're able to get our people to move in the areas. You see what I'm saying? Where we are, because we're scattered right now, and in order to really talk about having an independent nation and all that, we got to pull our people in these areas, because we're 27% in Alabama, we 20-some% in Georgia, or 32% in Georgia, and we're 20-some% in South Carolina, and we're 20-some% in Louisiana. I think Mississippi has a largest percent of 35 to 42%. So what I'm saying is, if you're gonna be in position to take control of something, but our numbers have to increase. That's why the call has been for people to move, people with resources and all that, to move and invest and become a part of this, so that we'll be in position when the time comes to take control of whatever area we're talking about that our nation state is supposed to exist in. So therefore we got the people who are in the leadership of this nation has to begin to make that call, and we have to make sure that people are voting, so that they understand that they're part of it. All those things is what we got to do every day. This is what we have to do, and when we get ourselves in position to do those things, we got to make sure we have material. We make sure that our army is set up the way it's supposed to be set up, and all the other things that has to be set up. So this is what we have to do. I mean, concretely, this is what we have to do, and then we got to make sure we that's doing these processes to the point of understanding that we ain't gonna go nowhere with this protest. Come a part of the nation, come a part of the state, come a part of the military that we have set up, and all the other things that we have, the hospitals and all the things that we need to set up in our community to take care of the health of our people. So,
You mentioned you got to make sure that we vote, and we want to be clear. We're not talking about voting for Donald Trump or Biden or Obama or whoever. We're talking about the elections that we hold every 3 years, and in fact, one is coming up in a couple of months in November. There are new African elections where we will be electing our national and local officials that will be running our government. And I think, it's important that you understand that we do, have an option. You do have a government right here that is acting on behalf of our people, is trying to establish, a nation right here. So, and why would it be important for us to participate in the new African elections? Why?
There's a number of different reasons. There's a lot going through my head right now. We have so many different fronts that we have to deal with in our struggle for liberation, that we can't negate any aspect of that. And getting the information out is difficult. We're part of a process, a new process that we created called NABA, which is it's an alternative to get the message and the information out, because a lot of times we don't get all the information. The one thing that's important about voting for the elections for the nation of the Republic of New Africa. That's the nation, the Republic of New Africa. That's our nation. There's a number of different things that can grow out of that. Number one, we're electing the officials of our provisional government. Any country that's striving for independence and freedoms starts off with a provisional government representing the nation and the land in which they claim to be theirs. Until that happens, the provisional government is there, and then it becomes the government of that nation, the Republic of New Africa in this case, in this instance. But we also can build so many different things out of the election. We can increase our knowledge of the citizens that are conscious citizens, and we can develop a tally of all of our citizens that participate in the election to enable us to do other things that will further allow us to advance our movement internationally, which would be for one, and that one out of many, to begin to the talks about having a plebiscite vote in which we determine that we as a people declare our nation to be this territory in the United States, and we let that be known international through the United Nations and all other international agencies that will recognize it. But that's one of the things that we can get out of that. The second thing is, which I mentioned first, is that we'll be electing officials in our nation. And thirdly, we'll be able to unite our people in terms of nationhood, that would create a foundation of unity that we haven't been able to ascertain throughout any other movement or organization. We can have one in which we attack all fronts, but those fronts that we attack have their own purpose and goal to be successful in whatever they're striving to do. But when it comes down to unifying as a people, we come together as citizens of the Republic of New Africa, and we all support our provisional government by voting each and every year. I think those are some of the benefits, not all, but some of the benefits of us voting for our representatives.
Grandmaster teacher, what do you think?
I think that what my brother just laid out, what the process is. That is that we have to do everything we can possibly to get the information and get people to come into action, activity, that the nation is sponsoring. That is that we got to get the information out so that people can become involved in a real process. In other words, knowing that this nation exists. In other words, and we do have a structure. We have a president, a vice president. We have all kind of officers and all that, and we have to get people to come to tie into to that structure, so that they'll be able to be a part of of that process. And then we have to put our money out of our pockets and begin to build a fund within the nation, so that we can be able to move and create activities in different areas where we are located, so that we'll be able to take control of our communities and all that. So and that way, concretely, we'll be able to do those things. And then, we don't have to be just a part of the nation. We can become part of a Pan-African movement and do things, because within our structure and we got to need to learn the ideologies and all the things that go along with the Republic of New Africa, so that we can begin to know that we'll support Pan-Africanism in all the forms that it exists, and it's in our structure, in our Constitution, and in our Declaration of Independence, and the more we're able to talk to people about those things concretely, we'll be able to draw people in and see that we exist. Now, our problem is getting the people to know that we exist, and every individual who has said their conscience, an element of the Republican, has to begin to hook up and link up with people with the information. If we should have the information in hand, so that if anybody asks us about what the Republic of New Africa is about, that we have that information to give to them, so they can read what the Declaration of Independence is and what it says and all, so in Gubu Saba and all that, we have to make sure we exercise the principles, African principles that leads to self-determination and understanding of what self-determination and what in terms of how we come together economically, and do those things together, and establishing the businesses and things that we do that would be on the benefit that we're not talking about making a capitalism work and all that kind of stuff. We're doing a collective. We're trying to build a collective, and the collective has to understand that every part or every element, must lead to our independence and all those things.
Definitely. A couple of more things I wanted to hit on before we get out of here. You mentioned earlier tomorrow, the 18th, is not only your birthday. First of all, early happy birthday to you, right, to our elder.
Happy Earth Day.
Yeah, big ups to that. So we got to do it big. You got to do it big for Grandmaster Teacher. But also, you share the birthday with one of our great ancestors, of great freedom fighter, Kwame Nkrumah.
Kwame Nkrumah.
Yeah, Kwame. Just briefly, kind of talk about the significance of Kwame Nkrumah.
Kwame Nkrumah was born in West Africa, in a colony that was called West Coast by the British. The British, Kwame Nkrumah, came to America and went to Lincoln University. He was a student. He created the African Student Association in North America. While he was a student at Lincoln, in Pennsylvania, Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, and then he left America and went to London and became a part of the Manchester, became a part of the Pan-African, the Fifth Pan-African Congress, and they had many African W.E. Du Bois and people from the Western Hemisphere like George Padmore, who are leaders and in the Western Hemisphere, organized the Fifth Pan-African Congress in Manchester, England, and went back. Many leaders, Kenyatta, Jomo Kenyatta, and other leaders, they were there present, and they left and went back and created independence movements and out throughout Africa. So he went back to Gold Coast, which is called Ghana now, and Ghana in honor of the ancient empire of Africa, one of the first empires of Africa. So he was able to organize. He was in prison. Well, first he was invited by a group of Africans, who were like in the petty bourgeoisie. It was called the Gold Coast, Union of Gold Coast, and so ultimately he was being young. Basically, these folks wanted to go slow about independence. So Kwame Nkrumah created a Convention People Party, which basically had the younger elements who were in the movement. And they went to protest. They had a positive action campaign, and the positive action campaign, they had demonstrations throughout Ghana, and what became to be Ghana. And he was in prison, and out of prison, ultimately he was elected, to come over the people of Ghana, and ultimately they forced Britain to grant them independence in 1957. And that's when he made the statement that, the independence of Ghana is useless unless the whole African all of Africa was free and united. And so basically, and he was a socialist. Yeah, he got his socialist origins and stuff in America, the United States, because if you look at the United States, Marcus Garvey and all of them, and Marcus Garvey was his favorite leader. And his favorite writing was The Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. So he was able to create, the government in Ghana. And as he was trying to develop socialism and all other things, he had the enemies that the former colonial power of Britain and the United States. The United States CIA ultimately engineered overthrow of Nkrumah while he was on a visit trying to deal with peace and with Vietnam, and trying to because he's also a peace lover, and he was trying to do and he wrote a book called Revolutionary Warfare. But before he wrote that book, he wrote Neo-Colonialism, in Africa, and Neo-Colonialism, the last stage of imperialism. And this opened the eyes of Lyndon Johnson, and who was president of the United States, because he came in 1965, and he had a warning in the book for them to not overthrow Ghana, but they went and overthrew Ghana anyway, But he was able to go next door to Guinea under Sekou Touré and became the co-president of Guinea, and he wrote Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, Class Struggle in Africa. And he was also a mentor to Patrice Lumumba, and Patrice Lumumba, came into Ghana in 1959, and they had a Pan-African Congress, and after he left the Pan-African Congress in Ghana, Patrice Lumumba went to do independence from the Belgian Congo, and became the first president of Congo, and was assassinated, through the help of the United States CIA and all that. And these are the kind of things that he's important. And when he dealt with his birthday, because the Catholic Church, his mother, was a Catholic, and went to the Catholic priest, and the Catholic priest, gave him a European name and all that, and marked his birthday down as September 21st. But in his autobiography of Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, he pointed out that his birthday was actually the 18th of September, and so he didn't recognize that the birthday that the Catholic Church, had given him, and to the point of where we understand all the things, and he put on, he used his African name instead of his slave name that was put up, colonial name that was put up to the Catholic Church. And because I think his name was Francis. Yeah, after the Catholic Church. Yeah. So anyway, so so he became Pan-Africanist as a result of all these experiences, and became the leader of the Pan-African. But they created a split in Africa because he joined the radical African states, which was at that time Egypt and and Morocco and some places like that had began to gain independence from from the colonial power, but they set up Uncle Tom organization against the radicals in Monrovia, Liberia. Now think about that. Liberia being the United States, basically neo-colony, and so he was able to, in spite of their opposition, create the Organization of African Unity. Which Malcolm X was able to come. Malcolm X visited Ghana. He got his inspiration, everything from Nkrumah, and Nkrumah, when the Black Power movement came into existence in 1966, Nkrumah embraced the Black Power movement as an international movement, so he was very influential, and many organizations created, became African organizations, such as the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the African people, as a result of their visit to people SNCC, who went to Guinea, and they met Nkrumah, and Nkrumah became an inspiration for the Pan-African movement here in the United States that became a worldwide Pan-African movement, and went from Black power to African power. So these are the kind of things. This is why he's still very important. And he had one book called Conscientism, which is a philosophy of social, African, socialism oriented to the African condition and all these things. And so I think it's important that we try to celebrate these kind of, and matter of fact, here in Memphis, for many times in the last 20 years, we have celebrated Nkrumah's birthday as well as Marcus Garvey's birthday.
Yeah. So very important to study this individual. It's somebody that the oppressor, the American miseducation system is not going to tell you about. They're not going to teach you about someone like Nkrumah or Garvey or Patrice Lumumba, any of our true liberation, freedom fighters who are actually bringing about real solution. And what you said that book was conscientism, because I haven't read that particular one.
Conscientism. It's really conscious. ISM.
Okay, conscientism. Okay, all right. Yeah, that's something. And I mean, he is a brilliant thinker, an individual that we if you got a Revolutionary New African reading list, you have to have several of his books on that list. So tomorrow is his birthday. So we will. I'm pretty sure we will be talking about him more on the New African Perspective, which we will be on tomorrow at 1:00 Central Time on Facebook Live. So make sure y'all tune in for that. And the rest of the shows on the NABA, because Tuesday we have the Foundation of the Nations with Salma Ad and Mama Ayo Deli. That's going to be on at 10:00 a.m. on Facebook Live, Central Time. And Thursday we have Conversation Between Comrades. That's going to be at 6:30 Central Time. Friday, Melly Queen has a blog talk radio show. And that's going to be at 5:30, I believe. 5 o'clock or 5:30, I'm sorry. And then next Sunday, we're back here at the Voices of New Africa. But, we've been on for about an hour, and it's about time for us to get out of here. Thank everybody for joining in and participating with us today. Before we leave out of here, I'm going to go to you, Kakai. You got anything you want to leave our people with before we get out of here?
Just that we try to get the information out. Today was a good conversation about Patrice Lumumba, and so we'll continue to listen to us, because we'll get the word out. Because that's our motto: to educate the uneducated and re-educate the miseducated. And I'm out of here.
No doubt. So, we must all become students of our history, our true history, so that we'll be able to communicate with one another, to be able to communicate with our people, and to be able to understand the world in which we live and the changes that we need to create so that our people can be liberated and our nation can come into fruition.
And I will say, basically, what you said, we have to become students. We have to continue to educate ourselves because intelligent people, wise people know there is always very much to learn. Always much to learn. You will forever be learning. They're only the stupid people who already know everything. So don't be stupid. Let's continue to educate ourselves. Let's continue to grow. Let's continue to connect with each other's. This weekend, the Black Liberation Movement, they have their Black Power Summit down in Jackson, Mississippi, a very powerful event every year. If y'all had anybody out there had an opportunity to make it, let us know how it was. I've been seeing some clips. Patrick Alexander, also known as Lumumba, good brother, always doing, always working out in the community building down there in the Mississippi front. So we have to all collectively work together instead of just doing our individual thing, because individually we can only do so much, but collectively, we can move worlds. So I am Brother Prophecy with my comrades for Dolly and Kakayi. This is the Voices of New Africa. We will see y'all again next week, and join us tomorrow on the New African Perspective. Free the land, family, free the land.
Free the land. Any means necessary. I'm Brother Zumbi New Afrika.
Opiemi New Afrika.
And we represent the Harriet Tubman District on the eastern shore of Maryland. We here at Nation Day 55 here in Charleston, South Carolina.
Enjoying it. Here to represent the Harriet Tubman District on the eastern shore. And just want to commemorate and celebrate the 55th year of the PGRNA.
Right on. Time to break it down.
Hey, how y'all doing? I'm Tajwa Jasiri from Columbus, Georgia. I'm with the People's Party for Independence. Our organization, we're standing on 5 principles of defense, education, economics, politics, and culture. And in doing that, we think if we can control these 5 principles, then we'll be able to keep the community safe, clean, and organized. And in keeping the community safe, clean, and organized, we know that we need to own, operate, and control the community. And in doing so, we think 5 institutions will help us, and that's a grocery store, a school, a hospital, a bank, and a community center. We've already purchased a community center. Next, we're going to implement a grocery store for our people. So we can all come together and unite to fight against all the ills inside of our communities. We'll be able to free the land, we'll be able to govern ourselves, and we'll be able to put ourselves in a position to where we can have some wiggle room. We might not always be free, but we'll be free enough to where we can breathe. So that's what we're looking to do, to have survival programs in place pending revolution. And we want to work with everybody around the world, work with everybody within the Republic, so that we can have some type of cohesion, some type of common unity to do what we need to do in order to put ourselves in a position to be what we need to be.